What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. So with more of our key coaching personnel in play, I wanted to do a deep dive and really investigate what does the fit look like here? Are we expecting to see marked improvement at some of these positions in certain cases when you want to talk about position coaches, but as a whole and then individually, right? Where are we going to see improvements? Where might things be a little bit stagnant? Where does it look like maybe we're taking a step back? And none of this is going to be perfect, right? It would be irresponsible to think that Aaron Glenn is going to have a home run hit, a absolute unanimous star at every position that he looks to hire. And in some of these cases, you also have to remember we're competing with other teams that also have similar openings, or in certain cases, these teams are also able to block some people. So in this case, I want to talk about the coach that I think is the biggest question mark outside of our offensive line coach today, but has the most important job potentially, right? In Charles London. He is our new quarterback coach. And one of the things that I wanted to start this off with was a thought that Aaron Glenn gave us, right? When he wanted to pursue getting back into coaching, he was stopped by Bill Parcells and he was told that he needs to go down a scouting path because he believes that the best head scouts are those that are the best talent evaluators. And this is maybe something that helped draw Aaron Glenn to Charles London as an alternative after the Commanders blocked David Blau from us, who was also their quarterback coach, with obviously Jaden Daniels having an immensely successful season. It made sense to at least tap in, but we quickly pivoted. We ended up with Charles London. And so when you look at, I bring it up because he spent a portion of his time with the Eagles. I believe it was just a year, but as a pro scout. And so we don't know what position, et cetera, that may have been in, but he still at least brings the background of looking at a position, looking at these players from the lens of an evaluator, right? And not just how does this guy fit my scheme, or how does this guy fit the archetype that I'm looking for, but legitimately, what are the skills that he has on display? How am I grading these in terms of levels and such? And then, of course, trying to figure out what the fit, the match, understanding the mental makeup, etc. is. And I think this has helped him out as we've seen him work his way up into a quarterback coach, right? So, former running back for Duke University, one of the things that I would consider, right? Because a lot of people look at Charles London, and I think they say as an alternative option, one, this isn't great. Two, even looking at his resume and understanding that he has quarterback experience, this is a cast off. Clint Kubiak ended up winning the offensive coordinator job for the Seahawks, which is another guy we were looking at for our OC position. And he wanted to bring somebody in that had familiar background with him. And from my understanding, the Seahawks ownership allowed him the power to go out there and reconstruct his coaching staff as needed. So, with all of that said, one of the, I guess, calling cards for Charles London here, as we look at his resume, is the fact that it's been spoken about his ability to impart or impeach some leadership into a lot of the players that he's been developing. Will Levis was probably the marquee name there that I continue to see or hear coming up. But still, Will Levis didn't become a household name or anything, but I think that's still going to be an underrated aspect of what we're looking here for, because we have to keep in mind we're going to be looking at a reset at this quarterback position. So all of this stuff is going to be of high importance for us here. Now, in no particular order per se, when he gets into coaching, it's via Duke University, comes in as a graduate assistant, elevates himself to a running back coach, then, and I believe he goes to the Bears from here, but in no particular order, ends up having the opportunity to work at Penn State as a running back coach, gets a recruiting coordinator responsibility there as well, moves to the Texans as a running back coach for a little while, has that year or so with the Eagles as a pro scout, and then you see him get in with the Bears. Offensive quality control coach, ends up being an assistant wide receiver coach,
ultimately lands as a running back coach. And then you start to see him work his way more into gathering responsibilities, more into this prime, position coach position as a quarterback coach, right? Falcons quarterback coach. Then you see him work with the Titans. He ends up being offensive quality control coach and offensive assistant, and then ultimately quarterback coach and passing game coordinator before becoming a quarterback coach in a lateral move, or technically a downgrade since he didn't have the same level of responsibility with the Seahawks. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. One, you can have the same sentiment that you had with Steve Wilkes. This guy moves around a fair amount, and he's not doing an overwhelmingly good job, right? There's some highlights in there for sure, but this is a guy that you look at and say is a must have. So the other piece is when he gets to a spot and he stays more than a year or two, he's able to continue to prove he can move up, and people are adding responsibilities onto his plate. So how I look at this ultimately is kind of just a neutral situation here. He does enough good, maybe I don't want to say bad per se, but just not enough to want to have somebody give him a quality look as being a OC per se, right? Now, I do find it intriguing that running back would be his primary background expertise, right? Former player, obviously has been coaching it for a long time, so you wonder about what the switch to quarterback entailed, right? Was this a decision of his own? Did somebody want to give him that responsibility and see how he picked up and went to it? And in that same token, he's able to find a couple other jobs after first getting a crack at that role with the Falcons, right? So looking at the quarterbacks he's worked with, Will Levis, Desmond Ritter, Matt Ryan is in there, of course. Marcus Mariota would be another name that you want to look at in terms of what he was able to do. And then, of course, Geno Smith here. And again, he hasn't been wildly successful with any of these guys, but I think when you look at this in a vacuum, these guys have still had at least solid seasons in some cases, but considering it's mostly been, well, I guess half and half, right? Rookies and vets, Will Levis, Desmond Ritter, Matt Ryan, Geno Smith, and kind of coming in unenviable situations, I would say, where you have a new coaching staff in play, you have a new top draft pick, right? There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stuff going on for a guy that's still mostly a neophyte at this quarterback coaching position, right? So with Will Levis, I think one of the things to really call out here is that when he had a crazy debut game, right? He comes in for Ryan Tannehill, I believe, and he has a 4 touchdown game, right? Goes absolutely nuclear. And I remember everybody in our fantasy football chat scrambling to try to pick him up and stash him, but he threw. I think this was an element of his game that they never really got a chance to build on. He had 3 touchdowns of 30 plus yards, right? DeAndre Hopkins looked like he was going to be a supreme benefiter or benefactor of switching to Will Levis, with him being a little bit more of a gunslinger, right? But then you go to Desmond Ritter. Not a ton to call out. There's not an elite game on the tape. He plays 4 games the end of his rookie year. And at least you can say during each of those final 4 games, he ended up looking better and better, a higher passer rating from each of those games as well. With his time developing Matt Ryan, or at least being able to guide him a bit, he did have a 7-2 record in games that were decided by one score, and they were tied for the NFL's second best winning percentage in such games. And this is a key factor to me, right? I look at the Vikings, 2 or 3 seasons ago, for example, where like 90% of their games were won, if not all, by less than 3 to 7 points, somewhere in that range, right? Definitely a one-score game. And so this not only speaks to that leadership that we talked about, which is a huge factor here, especially in the quarterbacks. You want them mentally tough, but also the ability to overcome maybe early mistakes in the game, things that may be out of their control, such as penalties, weather conditions, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then of course Matt Ryan was, he was on the downward part of his career here. So to be able to pull out that level of consistency, that level of fortitude from him was definitely a plus. And then even with Geno Smith, one of the things that intrigued me with this was that he had arguably two offensive minds that not only had more experience, but I would say are probably better out the gate at the job than what you would see with Charles London, right? Greg Olson, Dave Canales. Uh, while Geno Smith on paper had a better season, there's definitely some drawbacks there, but still, games are games, right? He did have a better record compared to Greg Olson and Dave Canales when they were coaching Geno. Better completion percentage, a higher volume of passes, more touchdowns, more yards per game, if you guys care about that. And then, in general, a better passer rating, although it's worth mentioning he did have the lowest QBR, which I would say is the more reliable statistic to roll with, right? But overall, you can make the argument that at least he fell somewhere in the middle. He wasn't as good as Dave Canales in getting the best out of Geno Smith, but he wasn't as bad as Greg Olson, which still had a really good year with Geno Smith. And it also just, full transparency. There we go. Full transparency here. He at least had, Pro Bowl, All Pro votes under Greg Olson and Dave Canales as well. While Charles London, he didn't see the same level of success with. So with all of that being said, I think ultimately, if you put a grade on this, you look at him as a C plus, right? There's upside in terms of him being young to the position, him being able to see more job opportunities. This is a position where if you screw this up early, that door is going to get shut on you pretty quick, right? Even if there's only so many positions out there, etc., that open up every cycle. So he's been able to earn jobs. He's done reasonably well considering, the lack of total experience as a QB coach. And I would say, at least in terms of what we've had to deal with, when you look at, Rob Calabrese being our former quarterback coach, it's an upgrade. So, am I saying that we're going to go out there and see, a Pro Bowl, All Pro level performance from whoever our quarterback this year is going to be? Probably not. But I am comfortable enough with his ability to either squeeze out a successful season from a veteran or potentially guide, the unencumbered mind of a rookie quarterback. So we'll see how this shakes out. I think ultimately, though, you'll see the development in the player, right? You'll see the fundamentals get cleaned up. You'll see the confidence remain throughout the course of the season. And you'll see the understanding of how we want to attack a defense based on the game plan, the script, if you will, for that game, for that opponent. And also something that can't be understated in terms of some of the responsibilities here for him. He's had pass game coordinator experience, right? So this is a guy that can also jump into that same room when we're breaking down our opponents and let them know, here's how I evaluate my quarterback skill, right? Based on me being a former pro scout, here's how I think we could best attack this guy, right? Considering weather conditions, considering talent on both sides, et cetera, considering health. Here's how I foresee this. Now you go to a guy like Scott Turner, veteran mind, you bounce those ideas off of him. So he also has not only his own experiences to rely on, he can kind of have that transformational learning that I think is really the best kind of learning in my experience when you want to talk about adult learning theory, et cetera, et cetera. But he has that opportunity to see exponential growth under this coaching staff that could still even see another veteran mind get added, right? So I would say C plus right now with the potential to maybe be, a B plus higher. If he hits an A, then I think you're talking about him doing a phenomenal job, of course. But let me know what you guys think, right? There's a lot of different ways to look at this. But I think this is solid enough, right? There's at least enough answers to questions here to where you can say, I have a vision for how this could turn out for the Jets. And then, of course, we can't forget this is going to be under the watchful eye of Tanner Engstrand. It's going to be under the watchful eye of Turner. It's going to be under the watchful eye of if and when we add another senior advisor, whatever the position title will be to this offense, and then of course under ultimately Aaron Glenn, who's going to be deciding play style, how we want to operate the scheme, et cetera, et cetera. So let me know what you guys think. I'll catch you again. Peace.